Hello, hello. Welcome to the Pam and Betty podcast. We go together like peanut butter and
jelly.
Well, today, guys, we're going to be speaking on free speech, sitcoms, and the changing times.
The shows we used to watch growing up while we had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yes. It's so funny, Betty, because back then our parents just yelled at us, just yelled at the TV instead of canceling it. Now, if somebody doesn't like something, they just want it off for everybody. And that's kind of crazy to me. What do you think about that?
Well, considering we had 3 channels.
Yeah,
it was just 3 channels growing up. Like, you didn't have much of a choice. Whatever was on. You changed the channel.
Yeah.
You went from ABC to CBS to NBC, and that was pretty much it. And in my house, we had Univision.
Yeah. Well, we did have Channel 2. We did have
We did
Sesame
have Channel
Street.
2, yes. But yeah, it's, I think I don't want to say that we didn't take things seriously or our parents didn't take things seriously. I remember sitting around, like, you had no choice. Growing up, I had no choice but to watch TV with my parents.
Oh, yeah, because there wasn't a TV in every room. There was one TV.
There was a TV in the family room.
Yes.
And that was it. So you watched whatever your mom and dad wanted to watch.
Yeah.
You had no choice.
And then at a certain time, I guess maybe like at 9, they would dismiss you because I guess the TV was too risque at 9.
Time for bed?
Yeah.
Or you got the 10 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And then the national anthem, and it was time to sleep.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, we believe in free speech, even if it makes us uncomfortable, because laughter and conversation are how we learn and we grow.
Exactly. And it opened the conversation with my parents when there was something on TV that was off or whatever, it gave us the opportunity to speak to our parents about what we were watching.
And have
regardless
a
of our age, and have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of it is lacking right now, because in so many homes, let's say you have, your nuclear family, mom and dad and 2 kids, or whatever. Yeah. And then this one is watching this on their tablet. This one might be watching this in the family room. Nobody's really watching the same thing.
Yeah.
So there isn't room for conversation. And then when the conversation is had, it's had with strangers.
Yeah.
On social media.
Yeah.
Not with your family.
Yeah.
And I think there's a disconnect there, because we're getting opinions from people who could be sitting in a basement being all weird on social media. You don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
So it's just very interesting how having conversations that make you uncomfortable is how you can understand one another.
Yes.
And what's going on. But nobody wants to be uncomfortable anymore.
That's
what I think.
Yeah, I think so too. You touched on something really important about us watching TV with our parents and we were more together, and now everything is kind of separate. And I guess that's because of technology. The TVs are smaller. They're portable. I remember when my father bought my mother, it was a pink little TV. I don't know if you remember it. It was in the kitchen, and it was like so cute. And we were so excited about this pink little TV, just to have another TV in the house, because we didn't have TVs in our bedroom until maybe I was a teenager. And that was like a big deal. But when that happened, it was a separation because everybody was watching their own thing. And then you didn't ask any questions because you probably were watching something you shouldn't have been watching in the first place. So you didn't want to ask because you shouldn't have been seeing it, kind of thing. So that is interesting. I hadn't thought about that. How that switched. And there's a whole nother generation now that has never probably watched TV with their parents because they start giving those babies tablets.
Yeah, you walk into a restaurant right now and there's a toddler who is sitting on a high chair with a tablet in front of its face.
Yeah.
And what is that going to look like for that toddler and when they're 10, 12, 15, 20 years old?
Yeah.
They didn't there's no interaction. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
20 years from now, I'm going to be in my 70s. So to be
Yeah.
honest with you, I'm not going to give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to be old. But, it's interesting to, to see that, because I remember as a kid going to a restaurant and they gave you like crayons.
Yeah.
Like the hostess would give you crayons and a little thing for the kid to entertain itself with.
Yeah.
Or there was a little game or something at the table
Yeah.
for the parents. But now the parents are over here having a conversation, or each one of them might be on their own separate phones,
Yeah.
doing whatever. And then you've got the kid over here on a tablet and nobody's communicating with each other. To be honest with you, why bother to go out? Why bother to even have dinner together?
Yeah.
Or lunch or whatever? Again, it's just, it's very odd. And I think part of the problem is not having discussions, even with your own kids, about things.
Yeah.
I remember watching a soap opera with my grandmother, one of her, Mexican novelas.
Yes.
Because I was at my grandmother's house and there was one TV, and if my grandmother watched her novela,
that's what you
you
watched.
did.
Yeah.
That's what you watched. Or you went and played with your dolls or something.
Yeah.
And I remember the scene, the woman was raped. They talked about it. I understood, what they were saying. But I didn't understand what it meant.
Yeah.
And I remember asking my grandmother.
Yeah.
And my grandmother told me what that was.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, I understood that was something that was very, very wrong.
Yes.
To have happened to somebody, because it was part of the story, and it made me ask my grandmother what was happening because I didn't understand it. Right now, it would probably be like, oh my God, that's not appropriate for a 7-year-old or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know what? It made me have conversations with my grandmother that then opened up to other conversations
Yes.
that maybe I wouldn't have had with her otherwise while I was growing up.
Yeah.
And we're completely missing that.
Also, if you can't have a conversation in your own household about important subjects, how can you have conversations out in the real world?
You can't.
Because that's where you learn, is at home, to have different discussions, to know what's going on in the world. And if that's not being taught at home, then you get out in public and now everybody's like, oh, we don't want to talk about anything. Or we're so angry because you have your beliefs, I have my beliefs, that we can't even come together with a decent conversation because we haven't been taught. So it's so funny because I'm thinking that I wanted this podcast to go, and I'm on a whole nother, my mind is reeling on a whole nother subject that we hadn't even discussed prior to just the learning at home.
Yeah.
Like that was lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we were saying the other day, why are these young people, or why is society so thin-skinned? Because we grew up with Archie Bunker and the Jeffersons and all the different shows that, Archie would call his son-in-law Meathead, and he told Edith to stifle, and Jefferson called him honky. And we didn't go like, oh, he called him a honky. We thought it was funny or whatever. And they were saying things that people said in real life to each other or about each other that weren't discussed. But since it was discussed, it was normalized. I won't say it was celebrated, but it was normalized, and that was what was going on. But there was conversation about it.
Absolutely. I was just having a conversation about that this morning, because you watched Archie Bunker, you listened and saw all of the crazy things that he did and he said. But I think Norman Lear's point was to show that there are people who think like this.
Yeah.
And they're ignorant.
Yeah.
They're racist and they're bigots and they're ignorant.
Yeah.
But you have to show that because there are people like that.
Yes.
And there were people like that, especially in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And there were people like the Jeffersons, and there were people like George Jefferson who wasn't accepting of the neighbor married to the white guy who he called honky. And then when his son-in-law and his daughter were having a baby, he was so worried that the baby was going to look like a zebra.
Yeah.
Like, we all knew that was stupid. That baby wasn't going to come out with stripes.
Yeah, yeah.
That was, so we laughed at it, but we were laughing at him because he was stupid and ignorant.
We knew it was
We were
ignorant.
laughing at Archie because he was stupid and ignorant.
Yes.
And the people that weren't laughing at him, who cares?
Yeah.
They were just as stupid as ignorant as Archie was.
Yeah.
But you recognized it for what it was.
Yeah.
And we weren't out on the streets boycotting CBS or ABC or NBC.
Yeah.
Because you have to also understand that there are people who do think that way.
Yeah.
You know, Archie had a problem with his spics,
Yeah.
with the Puerto Ricans that moved into the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
So did George Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there are people who still think that way. There are people that thought that way in the 70s. And if we don't show that part
Yeah.
of what's happening in the world and have a discussion about it, we're never going to move forward. And
Yeah.
I can't believe these shows are 50 years old, and these shows formed us,
Yeah.
made us realize how stupid it was to be this way.
Yeah.
And now
We've taken all that away.
We're repeating that because we refuse to show how stupid it is and have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
These shows would never be able to be on TV
Oh,
today.
no.
And that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the shows that are on TV that want to talk about, you know, that move forward with some of these things are immediately, you know, canceled, shamed on social media. They want the advertisers to pull.
Yeah.
That to me is crazy.
Now, they did pull stuff back then too, because I was researching, and All in the Family was on like 2 or 3 different times before it really got picked up. And they had to change the characters and everything because they didn't like how blunt Archie was at first. And so then, and they had a whole different name. And then they went back. I think they went to ABC first, and ABC had a show that it flopped, or that they pulled. They pulled in the middle of the show. Like the show was airing, and they got so many calls that they didn't even finish the show. So they just pulled it off the air like 15 minutes in or something like that. So then ABC was really, really afraid to show the, I don't even know what they called it at the time. So they said no to it. And then CBS had I think the Hillbillies and some other shows, and they were like trying to get out of that, but they still wanted to have some stuff that had some context. So they agreed to have All in the Family, but I think it was called, I can't remember right now what it was called, but they said, we'll do it, but we want to make some changes. We want to name it All in the Family, and we want to name them the Bunkers, what is the name?
The Bunkers.
Bunkers. And then they changed, what's his name? This Meathead.
Meathead.
They got him in because Norman Lear and his father were friends. Rob Reiner and Norman Lear were friends, and he remembered him being a kid and how he was, and he said, I think he would be really good for this part. Then he was dating Penny Marshall, so they thought Penny Marshall was going to be a shoo-in to be Gloria, and she tested for it, and they did Sally Struthers, but they just knew Penny Marshall was going to be it because they had such a good chemistry because they were a couple already. But then when Gloria came in, she had blonde hair and blue eyes like Archie, and Norman Lear wanted, and she was so cute, and you know,
remember she had the curls and everything,
and they wanted Archie Bunker to be endearing. So even though he was a racist, he had so much love for his daughter that they thought that the audience would fall in love with him because of her. So that's why Gloria was picked as Gloria and not Penny Marshall. It's like I was reading all this interesting stuff. Norman Lear was a genius.
He was.
He really was a genius.
Was. I mean,
from Maude
I remember Maude.
Yeah.
Where there was an episode that she decided to have an abortion.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that was like such, you know, a thing.
Yes.
You know, but these shows like the Jeffersons, like All in the Family, you know, whatever crazy thing was happening, whatever was going on that episode, you know, at the end, you know, you hoped that at least George got his lesson.
Yeah.
He learned his lesson.
Yeah.
Or
Archie
you know,
did.
I mean, you know, like I remember the episode with Archie and Sammy Davis Jr.
Yes.
He was such a huge fan of his, and then it kissed him, and that was like, you know. So I mean, just things that again, if you don't have that out there, then how are you supposed to talk about it and move on from it?
Yeah.
You know, And then not even like the sitcoms, but let's go into like what would be considered like reality TV back then, like the game shows.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I remember like
On the Newlywed Game.
not only the Newlywed Game, which you know the infamous in the butt Bob.
Yeah.
But I remember Family Feud, where
Oh my
Richard
God.
Dawson
Oh, my mother hated
kissed
Richard. He kissed everybody.
every single woman in the mouth. And I remember watching it with my parents, and I remember my mom and my dad saying, "Don't you let anybody do something like that to you. That is like, you know, there is like, you know, germs and all of this stuff." But he did it.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, when Biden was running for president,
Yeah.
and they had issues because he would put his arm around
Yeah.
some of the female reporters.
Yeah.
And you had Richard Dawson
Kissing people.
in the mouth.
Full in the mouth. Everybody. One after the other.
Like, forget about COVID. Like, that was just insane. And again, the Newlywed Game, people talking about their
Body parts, sex, their bedroom
escapades and everything else. It's just truly, truly crazy. But the fact that it's been 50 years since these shows, and I don't think we've moved forward. I think we've moved backwards.
Yeah.
And that is crazy to me.
Well, now I think anything that's going to be, I guess, cringeworthy, I guess that's what we would call it now, would probably be on like us on a podcast or on YouTube or something like that. Because now with the FCC censoring everything, which I think they're going to have to backtrack on this with Jimmy Kimmel because Disney is losing a lot of money. I think I read something last night that they've lost so far $3.8 billion.
It's crazy.
Money talks.
Yeah, 1,000%.
And I think that's the only way that people can get anything done now is through their not supporting something when they don't believe it or supporting it when they do believe it. But we really need to be able to speak freely. And
especially like with Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert or The View or Fox and Friends, whatever, whatever shows you watch on MSNBC, NBC, PBS,
Fox,
whatever, it doesn't matter. But in particular when it's a talk show, and
you can't talk.
Host monologue says X, Y, and Z, that's the time to bring in that other side as a guest. To talk. Because it's a talk show. Have people come in and talk. You know, because that's the only way we wouldn't be having this conversation. You know, Jimmy Kimmel and everything, you know, and being all over social media and everything else for the last 4 days would be a non-issue if he would have stayed on his show and then bring on people that are going to talk to you about what you said. Or their side of it, or how they see it, or how they felt, and have a communication about it. Have a conversation. But from the time that you decide that you want to end the conversation, then you're never going to be able to move forward.
Well, I remember, don't you remember back when Oprah had on the KKK?
Yes.
You know, that was a great show, you know, because people got a chance to see what these people were thinking, and they were able to have a conversation. And it wasn't, I don't think it got violent, you know, it was just a conversation. And nobody wants to have those important conversations. And we have to. If we don't, what are we going to do? Just walk around angry at each other?
Yeah. I think, and I mean, I don't think I'm being like seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. I'm 54 years old, you know, female, minority. I've seen a lot. I've been treated good and I've been treated bad and everywhere in between. But I think deep down, 99.9% of the people are inherently good. I really do believe that.
Oh, I don't.
We may have a difference of opinion on things, but I do think that people are genuinely good people. And if you could sit down and just talk about why you think the way you do, and let me tell you why I think the way that I do, I don't ever expect you to think the way that I do. because I would hope you don't expect me to think the way that you do. You're
Yeah.
not going to change my mind, and I'm not going to change your mind.
Yeah.
But if we go in to the conversation knowing that we're not going to change each other's minds, then I think you take away the part that's that anger
Yeah.
that you're trying to convince somebody, because then they're not feeling like you're trying to manipulate them and
Yeah.
thinking the way they do, but just have a conversation about why you think the way you do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
Well, I don't know if I think you could kind of change some minds, because I think sometimes if you've never been around a person or or people, if you never sat with a Jewish person, if you never sat with a black person, if you never sat with a Hispanic person, you have your ideas of what you think that person is. And I think sometimes when you sit with a person, talk with a person, we both have friends of all types and nationalities. But I don't think a lot of people have that. I think a lot of people are very closed-minded. They stay in their own little group, and they believe what they believe, and they don't even try to understand what somebody else is doing or up to or whatever. And I do think if you break bread with a person, talk with a person, I think some things might change. You can't. I'm saying you're not going to make a racist not a racist, but they might realize that some of the things that they think are not quite right.
Yeah.
And some of the things I think might not be
Yeah.
quite right. But we can't even get to a conversation to just sit down and talk.
And then one thing, and I'm talking about in reference to political ideologies.
Yeah.
I may not change your idea. I don't expect you to change mine, because we're also coming from two completely different spectrums.
Yeah.
When it comes to political ideologies,
Yeah.
I believe a certain way because of where my family comes from,
Yeah.
what my family went through to come to this country. They are immigrants. I'm first generation. Completely different. I see things from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
And I think if we sit down, I don't need, you don't have to accept and see things the way that I do in reference to immigration or communism or socialism or anything like that. But if we understand why I think the way that I do, and then you understand, and then I can understand the way you think the way you do, and well, vice versa.
Yeah.
I think that's just oh my God, that's huge. And we don't have that because nobody is willing to listen, to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just, cancel them.
Yeah.
And that to me is
even
not
when I
going
do,
to
even
solve
when
anything.
Even when I do watch CNN, I don't watch it as much as I used to, but when I do watch it, I notice that when they have somebody on with an opposing view, I don't even believe that they believe their opposing view. I think they're kind of just sticking to their talking points, and they're not really being true. You know what I'm saying? Like they're so opposite, they're so polar opposites that they stay with their polar oppositeness.
Because it's going to give them ratings.
But I think you need more than just ratings. I don't know.
No, the ratings equals money.
Yeah, but I think if you're true and you say, hey, I am a Democrat, but I do believe this was wrong, or hey, I am a Republican, I believe this is wrong, that my party shouldn't do this. You can't just stick to your guns on everything and just not have any wiggle room.
And that's what the problem is that you're so worried about let's say you're a Republican, and you can be a middle of the road Republican, and let's say you're on Fox, or Newsmax or whatever, but you're middle of the road. But everybody that watches this show and the majority of the audience, which then translates to money, is way over on the far, far right, well then if you want to keep your job, you kind of have to, pander to that audience.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the left or shows, let's say like CNN or MSNBC or whatever, they have to pander to that far left audience because those are the ones that are really watching the show.
Yeah.
And then that's why I think in some cases, podcasts, so many people who don't fit into one of those far left or far rights,
Yeah.
are now having a podcast, or their own channels.
Yeah.
For example, I think of Stephen A. Smith,
Yeah.
right? He just has a show now on Sirius XM. I enjoy watching News Nation.
Yes.
And I watch a lot Andrew Cuomo's show
Yes.
at 8 o'clock. Because he will have a lot of evenings when there's a lot of controversy going on. He will have Bill O'Reilly
Yeah.
on the show simultaneously with Stephen A. Smith.
Yes.
And they will have a conversation. And I don't know what other primetime news network actually has a show where there are people from two different ideologies that are actually sitting together and having a conversation.
But when they're having a conversation, are they kind of bending a little bit? Or are they
No,
just
they're
sticking-
not. No, they're not. But they're listening to each other.
Yeah.
And they're asking each other questions.
Yeah.
And they're not speaking over one another.
Oh, okay.
They're actually
Listening.
listening and having a conversation. And I think that starts at, like PTA meetings. That can start at like, civic groups. If you belong to like a book club.
Yeah.
Or there's so many places where you can start having this conversation and plant those little seeds so that it moves on.
Yeah.
Like, if anyone that's listening to us tonight and you have kids, whether they're in college, whether they're adults, you have grandkids, and it doesn't matter. If I ask you to take one thing away from this show, is to find the time in the next week or so to have dinner or lunch, or find time to come together as a family, whether it's the nuclear family or an extended family, and just talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
And listen to each other.
And have those meaningful
conversations.
Yeah.
Because that's going to translate out into the community, and I think that's going to make a big difference. And that's just my 2 cents.
I like that. I like that, Betty. Well, how can they reach us, Betty? Can they email us?
They can email us at the Pam and Betty podcast at gmail.com. They can also find us on YouTube at the Pam and Betty podcast, as well as our Instagram, the Pam and Betty podcast. So DM us, comment, tell us that you think we're full of crap. Tell us that you're going to go ahead and do this. But just let's start the dialogue. Good, bad, or ugly. Let's just do it.
Yes. And we'd like to thank our sponsor, the Accord Production Center, for having us. And we'll see you soon.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.